Up-and-coming artists have to tread a fine line if they want any amount of success. Most want a large form of recognition for their music, but most also dread becoming a one-hit wonder. Being known for one song isn't always a death sentence for a career, but that artist will inevitably live in the shadow of their one hit for the rest of their underground career. I enjoy looking into the stories of people with only one hit, since anyone's response to infamy will always be an interesting character study. Good thing there isn't already a series on YouTube talking about one-hit wonders. And if that were the case, it would be really funny if I just never acknowledged it. The 2010s wasn't really known for its one-hit wonders like previous decades, but it was still the peak of many genres, and none will be more infamous or contentious than white snarky hip-hop. Rap songs made predominantly by white artists who prioritize punchlines and messages over things like flow or lyrical ability, often to a corny extent. And no hit from this genre will be any more quintessential than a quaint little one-hit wonder titled I'm Awesome. I'm Awesome was a single released in January of 2010 by rapper Ryan Peters under the pseudonym Spose. Born in Portland, Maine, which shockingly isn't a hotspot for hip-hop, he took an interest in rapping on his way into high school and pursued it seriously after graduating in 2004. His music career began in a cover band called Fight Shirt, which turned into an original hip-hop troupe named the Frothy Four around 2001. The group's music has been lost to time and to MySpace's shitty servers, but Spose has admitted that the band was just a group of preteens writing raunchy verses to make each other laugh, so maybe it's best they haven't resurfaced. Though it gave Spose a good opportunity to hone his rapping skills, which he continued even after the group was no more. In 2007, in between serving tables at a local seafood restaurant, he would self-publish his debut mixtape, titled Preposterously Dank. With a name like that, you can already guess the kind of subject matter on this album, but I just want to inform you that the first thing that you'll hear when listening is a weed parody of Come Together.
Oh, so dank, he's got dilated eyeballs.
And it doesn't get better from there. A lot of these tracks have weird creative decisions that drag mediocre songs into being bad, like basic production mistakes or jarring sample choices. Like there's one song on here that brags about cheap drinks and alcohol over a sample of Say It Ain't So.
Muchos cannabis, I'm a blunt analyst. Burritos, Fritos, Cheetos, and a sandwich.
Nothing I could add could make this funnier than it already is. It's pretty much what you would expect a white suburban 20-something's first mixtape to sound like, and that style would carry over to his next project, a mixtape made in collaboration with fellow artist Cam Groves titled We Smoked It All. There has to be a connection somewhere. What does it mean? To promote this release, he sent its first single to local radio stations in hopes of getting airplay. That song would be I'm Awesome, and it became an instant listener favorite. I'm Awesome is an outlier on the mixtape. Most of the songs are standard braggadocious tracks about how he's a real rapper despite being from Maine and white. And also weed, but you get it by now. But this song actually has a concept with some thought put into it. It's a subversion of hip-hop artists' tendency to exaggerate how great their lives are, with Spose bragging about how pathetic his life is. It's not exactly an original concept for comedy songs or even for white rappers, but it's a good change of pace from the rest of the tape. It's the only song on the project that isn't about weed or hot chicks, but it's also played after many songs in a row of Spose also bragging about his skills and lifestyle, so it doesn't have the same punch on the record as it does on its own. It thankfully doesn't fall into the pitfalls of previous Spose tracks. The beat is catchy, with Spose saying he made it purposefully corny sounding to accentuate the subject matter, and none of the lyrics stand out to me as particularly terrible or corny. Most people wouldn't know about Spose's usual issues when hearing it on the radio, however, so on its own it's a fine track that's bogged down by being overall cheesy. Although it's definitely his best song up to this point, it still falls flat by having the same energy as Doin' Your Mom. No matter how creative he goes with an idea like this, it's still gonna perform the cardinal sin of being a corny rap song by a suburban white guy thinking he's much more interesting than he actually is. But luckily for him, in 2010 the general public had few objections to that type of song. I mean, Doin' Your Mom would be released a few months later. The ethos of white rappers was filled with self-deprecation and excessive cheese, whether whether purposeful or no, so I can say I don't like it in hindsight, but it very much fits in with the times. I'm Awesome would spread quickly through Maine's radio stations and would eventually begin seeping outside the state to build up steam nationwide. After a few months in circulation, the song caught the attention of Republic Records, who signed him and released I'm Awesome as an official nationwide single, giving it its final push over the finish line. Eventually, it got significant enough play across the country to peak at number 37 on Billboard's Hot 100 in April of that year. There wasn't an initial incident that sparked its popularity or any endorsement from another popular artist, it just spread naturally and eventually became big enough to land in the top 40. Keep in mind, Spose wasn't signed to a label when the song initially exploded in popularity, and he wasn't even popular in any underground scene at the time. The label did help spread the song, but it was already snowballing into its success beforehand, and this was before songs like Gangnam Style paved the way for online traction to count on the charts, so an independent nobody making it this big this fast was a very rare occurrence. Spose would get to producing his next record shortly after this spike in success. He would actually leave Republic just under a year into their partnership, without having released anything under them, but long enough to see I'm Awesome hit gold. He wrote an article for Cracked about his time on the label in 2014. He says his DIY style clashed heavily with the well-oiled machines of the music industry, who were both filled with yes men and dismissive of every song he showed them at the same time. I don't know what they mean, I thought the Weezer sample was genius. He also dedicates a whole paragraph to dissing Owl City, which is just funny. On April 20th, he would release the second We Smoked It All mixtape. Man, I wonder what his favorite drug is. And on December 17th, 2010, he would release his first album following his success, Happy Medium. I would describe Happy Medium as more of what people who like Spose would want from him, as well as some attempts to branch out. The production is much better than Preposterously Dank, but he's still rapping about weed, saying he's a real rapper despite being from Maine, and
I'm a mix of John Steinbeck and Biggie Smalls. You're a mix of vaginas and midget balls.
The only interesting track is a 7-minute story song involving a tragic car accident. I admire the ambition to make a song like that, but Spose's style absolutely does not lend itself to serious storytelling this early into his career. If you listen to the record, it gives off the vibe that he made it with the idea that the success of I'm Awesome would naturally rub off onto his other material. None of the tracks are as memorable or hit-worthy as I'm Awesome, even the remix of I'm Awesome isn't on that level, but what it does have is a track about his time at Republic Records, titled Pop Song.
If you're not up to the task, grab your bags, call a cab. It's too bad because we want you to write a pop song.
In the song, he really dwells on the fact that they only care about catchy choruses, which, in all honesty, I can understand their frustration, because every chorus on this album is ass. I can see some improvement of his style and scope of artistry on Happy Medium, but like I said, it's more of what he'd be known for at this point, and the things that are new haven't had a chance to develop fully yet. This is still in Spose's early years, but it's strange to not see any noticeable change after a hit like this. Spose would release 5 more albums and 2 more We Smoked It All EPs after that. His next release, The Audacity, showcases more emotional range, with him introspectively rapping about his life situation and generically rapping about the harsh truths of the world. Those tracks are still interspersed with his usual topics, however, but it shows some definite improvement in scope. It's definitely better than Happy Medium, but there's nothing particularly noteworthy about it besides those new elements. His next big release would be 2015's Why Am I So Happy, which is probably his most ambitious project subject matter-wise thus far. It's a lot more of the personal and societal reflection tracks of the previous, except with more refined ideas that are executed quite well. Some songs and lines do border on being preachy or overly grandiose, and some baffling one-off songs keep it from being solid, but overall,
I'm feeling a light to decent 6 on this thing.
And finally, his latest high-profile release, We All Got Lost, in 2018. This record is his most personal to date, with him reflecting on the close to 10 years of his professional career with none of the pitfalls of his earlier work. He talks a lot about wasted potential and the darker regrets in his life underneath some solid-sounding instrumentation. Tracks on previous albums have had a live band performing the beats, which was always interesting to hear, and this album leans into that heavily. If I'm being honest, this record has some of his best work to date, like the groovy punk rock-esque track Why Do I Do This to Myself, or the outro track Take You Home, which honestly gives me peak-era Kanye vibes. Not a perfect album by any means, but it's probably his best so far in my opinion. Seeing the progression and steady improvement of Spose's work was interesting to watch while making this video. I'll be honest, I didn't have high hopes, but he has been making some quality projects, even if they're not my taste. Overall, the career of Spose is one of a white rapper with initially little to make him stand out besides the state he lives in. He had a fluke hit with a quality concept, and after rejecting easy long-term success, he stays in relative obscurity as an underground artist with a devoted yet niche following. I can't say he's unsuccessful nowadays, most of his later albums debut high on the iTunes hip-hop charts, but where he is now is a far cry from how big I'm Awesome turned out to be at its peak. There are some mistakes on Spose's part that I could critique, like building his early persona of being self-aware of his genre's flaws, but immediately signing to the first record company that calls him and only realizing their motivations after the fact. But decisions like that are just single parts of the story of where Spose is today. In retrospect of his whole career, it's hard to say if I'm Awesome's popularity benefited or hindered his success in the long run, though I will say that his one hit isn't entirely representative of his full body of work. He's since matured past the early 2010s snarky, subversive hip-hop era, and his full career path isn't something you would expect to see if you only knew him from his one success. This is the story of many one-hit wonders, unfortunately. Their ideas line for a moment, and they either can't find a way to replicate it, or they don't force themselves to and live their lives comfortably in medium relevance. I didn't like a lot of things I heard from Spose's discography, but I can't say I didn't enjoy or was at least intrigued by some of his latter work. You can't deny that he still has a following, even over 10 years after his big hit, and some of his fans might say that I'm Awesome introduced them to their new favorite artist. With the way that one-hit wonders have arcs of relevance, it always leads to interesting tales of an artist, even if it's the origin story of an overall average white rapper. I'll say I was pleasantly surprised by Spose's career while making this video. I didn't really expect a lot beforehand when I only knew him from this one song, and even then I only barely remembered it. And even though I probably won't listen to him again after I'm done with this, it's still interesting to tell these types of stories, and who knows, maybe after watching this video you found your new favorite white rapper. But that's the story of I'm Awesome, Spose, and a general overview of the types of stories you'll find from one-hit wonders. I hope you enjoyed this video. Be sure to like it if you liked it. Be sure to comment about how great of a person and how hot I am, and I'll see you all in the next video.